Hi, everyone. Welcome to Inner Join. This is a show where we dive deep into the world of data governance and data management. I'm your host, Shinji Kim, the founder CEO of SelectStar. SelectStar is a data discovery and governance platform with an automated data catalog, lineage, and documentation. Today, I'm very excited to have Yomar Marquez, AVP of Cloud Data Management of Rise Analytics, which is part of Trellance Holding. He's going to describe a little bit about himself, Trellance, Rise Analytics, and how he's implemented ways to govern the data that maps to how credit union uses data in the financial services industry. Please comment on the chat if you have any questions for us. And Yomar, welcome to Inner Joy.
Hey, thanks, Shinji.
Really excited to have you here. I know that you put together some slides to share with Inner Joy today. So I'm going to pull that up and have you go.
So let me know if you can see my initial slide.
Yep.
All right, great.
Looks good.
Thanks for having me, Shinji. It's been quite a journey here at Trellance with our governance and support from SelectStar as our tool. Our use case was somewhat unique. You know, we're not producers of data. We consume data from our clients, I guess, if you will. So we're going to talk about that journey, right? Governed by trust, the credit union data journey at Rise Analytics. And, you know, we're building a culture where data is not only trusted, is governed by design, is governed for impact. We are Rise Analytics, right? We are part of the Trellance company. We were formerly known as Trellance. And we transform data for the credit union industry and turn it into insights. This is overly simplified, but I'll get into the details of how we do that and what the complexities we have. So, you know, I'll start into brief introduction. You know, I lead cloud data management here at Rise Analytics. I've been with the company coming up to ending my 6th year here. I've been in the data analytics arena around 20 years. I've been in financial services, insurance, and food service industries. And here I lead mostly governance and quality, more data quality assurance, but I also lead some of the data science and Scrum teams. So what do we serve? We serve the credit union industry, and unlike banks, you know, credit unions have, you know, just give it a little bit more context, they have unique challenges. They're member owned, they're community focused financial institution, they're not-for-profit, right? They have similar compliance and privacy regulations like banks, but that still exists, right? And just like any financial institution, you know, the scale and complexity, data just keeps growing. And I don't think necessarily the amount of resources you have to process this data or govern this data increases with, you know, with the volume. And it's like most financial institutions, right? Member data is sacred, right? And governance isn't like an option, like, oh, we may have governance or we may not. No, that's not an option for us. That's not an option for the credit union industry as well. So just to give a quick overview of the volume of data that we work with, right? We don't work as a credit union. We service credit unions, so we have multiple credit unions in our platform. And just to give you an idea of the volume of the data that we work with, right? A typical credit union generates, you know, anything from 900 to 1,000 tables per credit union to, like, you know, 100,000 plus columns. And these are not unique. We have different sources, different nuances. Even the same source may have different versions. So that adds a little more complexity when it comes to for us to govern this data. And how do we do this, right? And what does Rise Analytics offer? Well, we offer a platform where we have standardized ingestion processes that go out to the credit union's sources, and we ingest that data into our platform, if you will. We land the zone, and then we go through the different layers that people are familiar with. We have ODSs, and then we move, transform the data into our common model, right? Which is where our analytical platform really starts forming. And then once we go through that transformation, right, we start turning that into a different layer. People call it different names, what these layers are, but these are our BI layers where we have master data, we have normalized data, and this is where we start generating insights. At this point, we're still in our platform. We can start moving this data out within our platform, but out to different providers, or we can provide private Snowflake instances where, it's kind of like a sandbox. People can do their own thing. But for the most part, the journey is this, what I just showed. And you can see, actually, this is a snippet that I just added from our catalog, where we see, conceptually core processor loan servicing. You can see on the left, this is a little cut from our tool. These are the source systems that we actually ingest right now. DNA, these are specific to the credit union industry. I just wanted to put, a little context to, these conceptual architecture diagrams. So once we create this data intelligence layer, right, we start the journey for most of our credit unions begins here at the user portal, where they start consuming, the data. We have a series of reports, dashboards. We're exposing them through a Microsoft Power BI, and we do this through the use of APIs, right? We move the data out. Some people actually consume data straight out of the APIs, and we also service, also fintechs, different apps where we supply this business intelligence layer and for others to consume. I don't want to bore you here in the architecture, because this is more to serve as a background for the complexity, how our governance journey. So we narrowed it down to 5 things that we call our 5-pillar approach, right? It's a centralized glossary, right? That will help us define what that common model is, right? We have a single truth for all these definitions. It's in Select Star. We govern it there, and this is what we don't have multiple versions of this glossary. From what you have seen before, we said we had some sources, right? So we have close to 11 sources plus some third-party data. Each of those sources, right, we complete with context, right? We call it documentation, but basically dictionaries. This dictionary follows throughout, the complete lineage in our dictionaries. Not only having lineage, right, we have visualization, where it's like clear data flow mapping. We can visually see where data is moving in, right? In our journey, our data starts at the source, at the credit union. It goes through at least 13, 14 different hops until it gets visualized. We have a really clear visual of that data flow. And data layer organization, right? I just said we have different flows. Well, we have structure, right? We have accessible, we have documented what each of these stops or hops or layers are, right? With context, and it's all straight right out of the tool. And one of the cool things, and we're able to add value to the users, is is the transformation logic transparency, right? It is open, it is auditable. At any given point in that lineage flow, I can open the SQL code and I can actually read the code that's generating that object. That just helps us answer a lot of questions. Before we used to open a whole bunch of documents and Git and trying to get a business analyst and a developer, and it was a lengthy process. Now we can just hop in, open it up, and read what's doing, right? And right at the bottom says governance isn't just about documentation. It really isn't. Documentation is a mean to get you to that. It's about security. So how do we leverage all this documentation, because one thing is you having this documentation, but how do I use it? How do I leverage all this documentation? Well, like I said before, it's about security. So what do I need? Where do I need to add additional layers of security? Right, our data is extremely secure in our Snowflake environment, but how do I add that extra layer? How do I start sharing data with our internal users, our ETL developers, some of our business users? Well, we started leveraging Snowflake's native like dynamic masking. Fortunately, SelectStar has given us that ability to scale this, right? Do it in a faster way. So as we go through our governance process, right, we identify, we classify that sensitive information, and that's where we apply a tag that we create in SelectStar, and we just start going into the catalog and applying these tags, right? Well, we talked about, having 100,000 columns. Like, I'm not going to go in and manually tag, 50 tables with a tag, right? The tool actually automatically propagates that tag through the lineage we just talked about, right? And it's across similar tables and lineage. SelectStar is able to, the lineage is able to identify the movement, right? Where this data is moving either upstream or downstream, and is able to apply that tag wherever that data is moving to, even all the way to our BI layers. So we said that we applied one tag, right? That tag could easily propagate to 25 different places. I don't necessarily have to go and tag 25 places. Imagine that times 40, 50, 100 clients. That becomes unmanageable. So the tool allows us to automatically propagate. Then SelectStar actually is connected to Snowflake. It places that tag in Snowflake, where our security teams have created policies, masking policies, that are driven by role-based access. So in simple terms, Snowflake, depending on their use, either says you can see sensitive data or you can't, right? And it's driven by this tag that we started in SelectStar that get pushed on. And then we drive that dynamic masking. So I talk about all these things, but I want to talk about, what are the benefits of doing this? That's just a security thing that we put, but what are the benefits? So it's easy discovery, right? We talk about loading data dictionaries, having a centralized glossary. Why should I have this, right? Why am I doing all this work? Well, it's because it makes it easier for you to search, right? To classify, to look for things at scale. Automated propagation, right? Limit the manual effort, just like any other, same thing that most people here are in. We're limited in resources, right? We we need to be as efficient as we can. So, the tool allows us to propagate this automatically. We can take advantage of technology that allows us to do protection real time based on access level. It's adaptive security, right? It protects sensitive data while preserving access. That doesn't mean because you don't have access to that data that you can run queries, that you can process data, that you can join. You can still, you just won't be able to see that data. And it's all driven by that, that simple tag we did in our catalog. And it's compliance, right? Because it's tag based. At any given point, right, I can group and I can produce a report, whether it's PCI, whether it's PII. At any given time, I can aggregate this and provide, documentation for regulatory or for our auditors, wherever it may be. I've worked in many places where, just this process alone would take weeks. Trying to come up together with a report of, where does our sensitive data live. So a little bit more about, our technical architecture, right? We're a Snowflake data warehouse. It's our central data platform. SelectStar helps us with the, automated metadata extraction. Also provides a real-time lineage tracking, and it's role-based access control. The catalog is searchable. I can look anywhere I want, anything I want. We have loaded business-friendly descriptions, it's usage for analytics, popularity scoring, conversations, questions, and then that security layer, right, where we can provide privacy classification, dynamic masking, like audit trail maintenance, compliance reporting. Then we have our Power BI. They have governed data marts, certified business metrics, self-service analytics. One thing that I did forget to add in here is that we use DBT for our ETL. Lexar also ingests DBT data, right? And that's what actually helps us coordinate, get that beautiful lineage everyone always looks for. There's a connector for DBT, and we're leveraging the use of DBT. So every single hop of the data, right, I can see that, and it's wonderful. So what challenges have we overcome? Well, we talk about credit unions, right, having multiple systems. They don't operate on one system, multiple systems. They have what we call the core, but then they have ancillaries, which are supplementary things for like different type of loans, mortgage, auto loans. One thing that we do in our platform is connect, right, these disparate systems and offer a single view of your member. Well, this is not that easy, right? That's what differentiates us from the rest, is that we're actually able to do so. But in order to do so, you need to understand your data, right? This tool helps us do that, exactly that. Prior to having Select Star, we had a whole bunch of hundreds, if not thousands of spreadsheets, right? And Confluence and SharePoint, and who's the owner of this, who's the owner of that, who's going to update, right? Again, we have limited resources. We also have limited constraints. Like we would always rely back to the credit union and ask questions like, hey, this table, what does that mean? We're going to get this, we're going to get that. Now we are able to, since we're loading all this context, most of the questions we can, answer ourselves. We need help in navigating compliance frameworks. Like I just said before, being able to produce, to consolidate, to group things easy, fast, is just something that we've overcome in a short term. And again, knowing your data, know where the source of your data is, knowing what your data is, right? We maintain that confidence with the members, right? Keeping that trust while we continue to modernize, right? We can't stay stagnant. We need to continue moving on, and we have a couple of lessons, that we learned. You start with trust and security, right? That convenience comes later. I know it's painful when you start your governance journey. Most people complain, it's like, oh, governance is going to be so much difficult now. I won't have access to this. I won't have access to that. Well, it does need to start there, unfortunately. But can it get better? Can it get convenient? Yes, it can, right? But having the right approach is what's going to be key. And right, like I said before, security. As long as you think about security first, that convenience is going to come at a later point. And trust me, it does. And then, like I said before, resources are constrained. So what do you look for? You need to automate as much as you can this tag propagation, right? Propagating definitions, right? Similar columns, like reusing some of these mappings that we use and onboarding these new clients. Like we're not going to onboard a new client and start loading all this context. So let's start propagate those descriptions as well. So when we onboard a new client, tags, descriptions, they come with it, right? They get propagated, and I don't have to, I just go through my govern process, right? My controls, I go see what I just added to my catalog, just making sure that definitions are there, that the tags are there, and then we get certified. We're ready to go in there. And that's what drives our business user adoption, right? They know that when we say data has been cataloged, they can trust that the data is there, it's been governed, it's been curated, if you will. So that's part of our journey, right? We're in the midst of it, right? At this moment, we're looking to scale. We have still customers credit unions that we still need to onboard, that we need to go through this governance process, right? But like I just said, with the automation, it's just a process of bringing additional data, additional customers, because the tool allows us to scale, to propagate, to automate, in a way that we can trust it. So we have more or less our journey laid out, right? It's just bringing more data, making sure that it's governed. But beyond that, what are we looking forward to? So we offer predictive models as part of our offering. So, AI capabilities, right? We're looking for AI to provide us with better customer experiences, right? How do I use this rich context that I have in SelectStar, right? I can start implementing AI chatbots to interact with the data. I can start, Q&A. I can, very pinpoint, ask specific question. The other thing is that we have 11 sources and we have, a dozen domains. So integrating new sources that I don't know or domains that we're just starting to do, AI is going to let us speed up that process, bring those new sources, those new domains into our platform. And if I don't have the sources that I currently have well documented with context that's rich, right, where those targets are very well defined, I can't leverage AI to help us, integrate those new sources. So it's I'm looking forward to explore those options. Like, also, we need to improve our predictive modelings, right? With LLMs, again, it's all about context. We need to refine our predictive models. Well, how do we refine them? Well, having the most rich business metadata, that semantic layer that everyone looks for. But you have to couple that with the actual data, physical data that you have. And again, we talk about that semantic model, right? In order for you to scale AI, you need to have those definitions. You need to have that context. You can't have gaps in there. It has to be well defined, because your models are going to start making stuff up. It's going to start to hallucinate. It's not, you don't get to that accurate level that you need for a model to, to go out to the market and sell to a customer. And, that's about it. That's our journey right there. Shinji, I guess, if you have any questions, anybody have any question for the audience, I'm open.
All right. Thanks, Yomar, for sharing your story at Rise Analytics. I think it's definitely a very interesting challenge that you guys were going through, given the industry that you're part of, and also trying to scale that approach of managing data with automation. I have a few questions to kick it off as a follow-up here. You've mentioned that having an easy search and discovery for data catalog as a number one aspect of the main feature of this data journey. You've seen other and have used other data catalogs before. How would you describe the business impact of having an intuitive user experience in the data catalog for you?
Intuitive experience. Well, having a catalog is how do you want to have your data catalog? Is it like I always explain to people, like, everyone wants a data catalog. Think of it as a photo album that comes empty, right? You need to fill it with pictures. And okay, I fill it with pictures, I fill it with sources, but what's the context? Like, what is this? What is this data? That's where you start enhancing, you start defining what the tables are, what the descriptions are, and then you start noticing patterns, right? Then you start adding domains, you start establishing relationships. But we talked about the sheer volume of the data that we have, right? So how can I use this catalog to become searchable, to give me the business answer I need, right? Let's say I'm looking for a member employer or something along those lines, or what products they're using. Well, if I have a curated data catalog, right, that I can mine, that I have established, that I have curated, I can search very easily. I can search by terms, I can search by tables, I can search by tags, I can search by, in a collection. And just being able to search across all this data that exists in my catalog and pick only from where I want to search, that's key right now. Otherwise, you're like going into SharePoint, going to Git, going into Confluence, and look at content that others have created where you have no control over whether that's stale, whether it's old, whether it's even true.
Yeah. So having that single source of truth so that you don't end up wasting time or effort on ending up with the right
Absolutely.
just to use makes sense. And also for data lineage, that's been a critical part for Rise Analytics. Can you
Yes.
share a little bit more about that business impact that you have now presented since you've implemented the Select Star?
Yes, like anecdotals, like everyone's looking for that golden unicorn, that lineage, right? That perfect lineage. And people have some kind of lineage, whether it's, it can be fragmented, it's from here to here. We have full lineage, like we have lineage from the source all the way to our dashboards, right? And now we're able to, put this at the hands of our support teams, meaning that we have our users in our portal and they're asking questions like, hey, I noticed that we have here amounts closed, this month, and I have this metric. Where are you getting that information from the source? This data has hopped 100 different places. It has been transformed, business rules applied. How do you answer this question? Well, through lineage. I can go immediately and say, what are you looking for this? Close, right? It's in our semantic model in Power BI. This traces back to this table in your source system, right? Again, easier said than done. We have joined to other sources and master data. So it's a bit more of a complex, right? But through the use of the proper lineage, we're able to break down that complex process and get an answer in a much quicker way.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think the more complexity you have in the data and more, I guess, decentralized or distributed how the data pipelines have been built. Also, I think BI adds another complexity. Your analytics team or the business team might have built their own semantic model on top of existing physical data, and being able to see that as having that visibility, I think makes the difference.
That, and one thing I wanted to say, Shinji, is that many tools, I've been doing this for a while, many tools out there offer lineage, and it's offer what kind of lineage. Like this is the first time, and I'm really excited about this. This is the first time that I have actually implemented a governance tool that gives me this level of visibility into the transformation. It's been a journey, but we have multiple technologies and stuff like that, but our lineage is working to the point. I'm really excited about that.
Awesome.
And yeah, no.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that we were able to help and it's working in that automated way, so you don't have to worry about stitching things together between the systems.
Been there, done that. Yes.
So during your presentation, you also mentioned that the governance is built for impact, which really resonated with me. I wanted to hear a little bit more about some of the tactics that you've used and that you felt like was working when you were trying to increase more of the adoption of those governed data by your business team.
Sure. I mean, when I talk about impact, right, is you can take multiple approaches to governance. Like, is it the approach according to me, Yomar? Or is it the approach according to credit union, to the industry, according to RISE? What's important for me might not be as important for you. It might not be impactful to you. So I think we talked about the 5-pillar approach. We thought about this, like what kind of governance framework are we going to adopt here, right? And basically boils down, why should I be doing governance? And so we decided on that 5-pillar, and all the work, all the development we did, all the rollout, all the planning was geared towards that, so we can make impact, so we can have answers, right, to our users, so we can have security from the beginning. Security wasn't an afterthought. It was meant to be that way. That's why when we roll out and when we implement, we have an immediate impact, right? With like, this is what we said we were going to do, and here it is. It's not like a show me what this tool can do. No, I'll show you what we said we were going to do.
So working with the domain owners upfront regarding setting expectations and what it would do and not do when
Yes.
when it's available.
Correct.
There you go. And as you are doing the rollout, are there any like indicators, things that you measured to ensure that this is being adopted and successful to your standard?
I mean, there's indicators that, there's something I use, mostly on a weekly basis, which is, revising logs, like who's using the tool, who's in there, who's contributing. A great indicator for me and like sort of like a proud moment was we just finished our PI planning session this week, and this was the first time I did not speak about SelectStar personally. I had other teams talk about SelectStar. I had other teams talk about how they use SelectStar. I had other teams talk about how they were able to answer questions using SelectStar. And I was actually able to sit down with other team members, show me what they found in SelectStar. It was kind of funny because I'm like, are you showing me? Like, I implemented this. I made it available there. It's
And
like,
now you're learning back from your users.
Right. Then, well, I found this that we're working on a new product, and the entire team is using the tool, and that was like, it was really cool. Just so these are indicators, like, ask around, rather than, hey, do this, do that. Ask around, like, are you using this, and how do you use it? And yeah, just spread the word, show them. Don't tell them that there's a tool. Show them what they can solve with the tool.
Yeah, I think that is something that we see very commonly when our customers do a rollout of SelectStar, giving them the specific examples and having them to see like how to find those is like a starter, so that when end users start exploring on the tool, they actually find more insights and areas that they find more helpful. So it becomes more of like a feedback virtuous cycle.
And those are easier conversations when people start asking, like, so can SelectStar do this? And you're like, well, something, it's a good use case. Let's explore a little bit, further. It's not like a solution. Like, we need to think about this, right? A little bit. So that, put this thinking back to the people who are asking, so you can develop additional use cases.
Yeah, for sure. I would say right now, what would be like a current impact of related to how you were able to do the automation of PII management through Lineage? About how much of PII tags and I guess end users are being impacted from this implementation?
Well, big, right? Because now we can scale our dynamic masking, which is usually mask all our PII. And that actually, when we say trust, like, that gives access to the data by different groups. Whereas before we needed to have a really tight controls, which we still do, but now we can share data a little bit easier, right? Because we can move people from data, physical data. Now we can direct people into the catalog, right? If you need to find out anything about data, you don't need to go into the actual databases. We can use the catalog. And if for whatever reason you're in a support role, right, you need to go and work directly with the data, we have tags in there that drive masking that allows you to go in there and work with the data. Also has been huge.
Yeah, so that the business logic can guide the data access as predefined by the management team. Great, awesome. Do you have any advice that you would give to other data teams that are preparing to adopt a data catalog like SelectStar? Is there anything that you felt like you're glad that you did with SelectStar, or you would do a little bit differently if someone is just kind of like beginning this journey?
I would recommend to have your use cases, well defined. And when I said use cases, right? I guess there's a saying in the industry, right? Think big, start small. Exactly that. Think big, start small. Narrow down the amount of use cases you want and really take the time to define them and understand them. And make sure that these use cases align with your enterprise initiatives so that you can clearly, when it comes time to funding, that you can clearly articulate why do you need a catalog, right? And what is this catalog going to do for you? And what impact is this catalog going to have in your business outcomes? That has to be extremely clear and defined from the beginning. That avoids a whole bunch of other issues down the line. And have clear expectations of what you're trying to, to accomplish with your catalog that goes in line with the use cases, right? Think about when we talked about lineage. How much lineage do you want? What level? What technologies do you have? Does this tool support your tech stack, right? I was very, I guess, Shinji, our process took a little bit longer because I was very skeptical in the beginning. Like, everyone offers lineage. I'm like, no. Show me. Show me that you can do this, right? With the technology stack that I have. And you did, right? And it is working. So the last thing you want to do is go down a journey where your tool doesn't support your tech stack. Then makes you look bad in front of the board, in front of senior leadership that, the tool you brought on doesn't work. That would be my advice to anyone starting this journey.
Understood. I guess the main use case that you wanted to start with would you say was the PII management side?
PII, single source of truth, having a metadata repository that we could query, that we can use, that we can start filling in. Yes, and lineage was big. Like, lineage was a top priority, was a late, I guess, implementor. It's a little bit more complex.
Yeah. And now we've gotten that use case out of the way, having more people leveraging SelectStar for their data discovery and understanding. As you're looking ahead, what are the main next frontier for data governance front at Rise Analytics?
I would say, now you have this metadata, like, you have your process, you have your governance in place, but what do I do with it? How do I leverage all this richness that I have, right? Everyone is in ways of, using AI. Well, using AI, have the model, one is having a really good semantic layer, right? And it can't be disparate. It can't be all over the place. Like, I have some context here, I have some context over there. And I'm going to somewhat feed it into, into my AI models or platforms or whatever. Like, I think that having a centralized place where this data, this metadata is easily consumable, is going to help us accelerate that AI journey for us.
Yeah, for sure. I think that enablement of an AI is definitely a top of mind for a lot of companies today. And you've talked about it a little bit here too.
Yeah.
Are there any particular teams or domain teams or use cases that you want to try to enable AI on top of this data governance that you've now implemented?
Well, we have part of our offering is, predictive models. And, we have some well-defined predictive models, but we like to start exploring, new models and new tools. And we like them to be more flexible, more interactive, more agentic, where we can prompt these models, right? And if we don't have that semantic component to it, we can't really do it. We can. Accuracy is just not there.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the areas that we're also actively working on. So I'm very excited to partner with you on generating and kind of managing that semantic layer aspect. You've also implemented a way of kind of a semantic models in Snowflake today, right? Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're Part of our journey is not only having the context in Select Start, right? What we're next steps is to start implementing all of this through the use of DBT and actually push that metadata straight to Snowflake. That way we start that journey, right? We start building that semantic layer which lives in one place, where when we start working with tools that they can not only query the data, they can also query that metadata layer. Lexar just makes it easier for us to use different platforms, different tools.
Yeah, because of the connection that we have with all the integration,
Correct.
all the tooling around the data ecosystem that you have. That's great. So yeah, I mean, to wrap up, I think last week and this week, there's been a lot of news around the data industry with the Snowflake Summit and Databricks Summit. Just overall, the last 6 months, there's been a lot of development in the data industry, along with the improvements that's happening on AI models as well. I'm curious to hear what you're most excited about and things that you would want to give it more a try and why.
I mean, there's a lot of consolidation, right? And I guess everyone's bringing their own flavor of, like data ingestion and AI, right? And I guess a lot of people talk about, what the tech stack does and like I can ingest data from here to there and I have, this AI capability. And I've noticed that most people forget to bring up the subject of the catalog and metadata. Like an afterthought, it's kind of like you have to dig deeper and you have to ask, it's like, so how are you gonna, make these models, more accurate? Oh, well, we have all these, you know, models that do this and the technology and does that, but they forget about the governance side, right? That semantic layer. And I'm excited to see who is going to be able to, put that up front as a guess that's a selling point, that their models are leveraging business metadata.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Not,
I mean,
not magic.
exactly. It's not magic. If it's magic, then there's probably going to be a hallucination. There's a result that you probably didn't intend to or wanted. And this is like why I think in AI, context is really the king. And there's a lot of context that can come from the metadata layer and observing and understanding what's happening around that data. And then there's the context, the semantic layer context that you would add to clearly define how things should be calculated, treated, or observed. And I think those are both really important contexts to make your AI more correct and working as you expect.
As it should.
So AI cannot read our minds.
It definitely cannot.
So yeah, I think that's a great point to end the conversation. Yomar, thanks so much for being here and sharing your journey at Rise Analytics today. I've learned a lot, and I think it's been really wonderful to partner with you at Trellance, really getting this to the point of leveraging this lineage structure to propagate and scale the PII management. And we're excited to continue the partnership to enable the next frontier of enabling AI with you too.
Thank you for having me, Shindy, and thank you for being, as I call it, a trusted partner. Selexar has always been open, always listen, right? Many features that are in there. You were very open to listening to what our needs were. So I worked with many different vendors, and this partnership, certainly one that I feel good about.
Amazing. Thank you, Omar, for being here. And we'll see you later. Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend, Shinji. Take care. Thanks.